All right. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Nicole, and welcome back to our English class. I hope you had a great day. For today's session, we were going to have another lecture on intonation, which is part of our umbrella topic, which is on pronunciation. Now, we have just clarified and subtle but important difference between intonation and tone yesterday, right? Yesterday we focused on defining what intonation is, understanding its importance, its difference between intonation and tone, its components, as well as the problems and some tips when it comes to intonation. No, so we understand that intonation provides the grammatical and structural framework, while tone adds the emotional coloring. Now let's move on to explore the main intonation patterns in English. These are um, the fundamental melodies that our voices use to convey meaning. The first and perhaps the most common pattern we will discuss is falling intonation. Now, as the slide indicates, with falling intonation, the pitch drops towards the end of a phrase or sentence. Your voice starts at a certain level and then descends on the last stressed syllable. Okay? So, when do we typically use falling intonation? Well, it's often used to signal a sense of completeness, certainty, or even finality. It's like putting a period at the end of your spoken sentence. So, let's look at the example here. I'm going home. Again, I'm going home. Now, when you say this with falling intonation, your voice descends on the word home. Sorry for that. Okay, this one. Let me put an underline. Okay, that one. So, what do you call this? It descends in the word home. So this signals that you are making a definite statement, a clear piece of information. Like there is no ambiguity. You are certain about your destination. Now, falling intonation gives a sense of resolution and confidence to your speech. It's like a very common pattern that makes up a huge part of everyday English. Sorry. It's a huge part, of course, it makes up everyday English language, communication, or conversation. So, understanding when and how to use it correctly is a big step towards sounding more natural. Okay? All right. Um, Now you see the symbol here, right? That one. So, of course, in identifying whether a phrase or a sentence is using rising or falling, they use some symbols to also help, visualize. Aside from speaking the sentence or the phrase, they use some symbols for visualization. Now, for example, in the example sentence, they would put it like this. Well, it's too thin, but yeah, something like that for a moment. Let me just, edit it maybe. Let me find a, oh, it's really too thin. Mhm. How about this one? Anyway, let's just use that. It's something like that. It could be with an arrowhead, or just, a slanted line. No, we can do that. Of course, we put the symbol right under. If we talk about falling intonation, we put the slanted line right under the word, no? Right the under the word that is focusing. We are focusing here. That's on falling intonation. Okay? All right. Now I've just established that falling intonation means our voice pitch drops toward the end of a sentence or even a phrase, so signaling completeness and certainty. Now let's really delve into one of its most common and fundamental applications, which is using it for statements of fact. Okay? Now, this is perhaps the most straightforward case for falling intonation. It's when you are just giving information and then you're done with your thought. Okay? Imagine you are sharing a piece of information that is definite, that is conclusive. Sorry. Let me excuse myself for a moment. I'm so sorry. Okay, thank you for waiting. Anyway, yes, this we are on statements of fact. Okay, where am I? Where did I end? Yeah, statement of facts is when you're just giving information and you are done with your thought. So maybe you can imagine you are sharing a piece of information that is definite, conclusive, and not open for immediate questioning or discussion. So your voice drops at the end, essentially putting a firm period on your sentence. This sounds confident. This sounds direct and clear. Okay? All right. Let's dissect the examples from our side to really understand this. First example, I live in Cebu City. I live in Cebu City. Now, as you've noticed, there's a symbol right after it because it's just how do you call that? It should be actually right before city, right under city, not before. Oh, sorry. Yeah, something of this sort. You can like do just do that. No, it should be like that. It's just that there's some error when I yeah, there's some error. The how do you call it? The symbol cannot happen. It cannot be copy pasted and be put right under the word. So it will just look like that. But it is referring to the last word, which is city. Okay. Now here to elaborate on this example, I live in Cebu City. For a moment, let me just check my screen. Okay. All right. So when a speaker utters this sentence, they are stating a personal truth, a fixed piece of information about their current residence. I'm so sorry, I keep yawning. I don't know why, but yeah, this they as I've mentioned, they are giving you a fixed piece of information about their location, about their home, about their address. So there's no doubt in their mind, and they expect the listener to accept it as a fact. No? The falling intonation on city, it perfectly reflects this. Your voice descends, signaling that this is my location, period. Okay? Consider what would happen if the intonation did not fall. If your voice rose on city saying, I live in Cebu City, it would constantly transform into a question, right? Perhaps indicating, so sorry for, okay, let me just put it right at the center. Okay, so yes, a question, it would turn a question. This just only illustrates how intonation dictates the very intent of your sentence, even when your words remain unchanged. A clear fall removes this ambiguity, which makes your statement sound assured. Okay? All right. That is for the first example. Let's have the second example. The meeting starts at 2 o'clock. The meeting starts at 2 o'clock. So still with the symbol. We're focusing on the clock here in the clock. Now, this is another classic example of a statement of fact. It's an objective piece of information, which is, a confirmed schedule. So the speaker is not asking if the meeting starts at 2, nor are they expressing uncertainty. They are providing precise details. At 2, how do you call that? They're providing precise details. Maybe the following intonation in a clock communicates this divine definitive, I'm sorry, where did the word come from, but yeah, definitive and final nature. It conveys reliability, and it ensures that the listener understands that this is confirmed information. Again, if that intonation were to rise on a clock, the meeting starts at 2 o'clock, it would still become a question. No, it would still seek information. Now, the following tone here is crucial for delivering clear and ambiguous factual information. Okay, those are the two sentences under statement of facts. Now, in general, everybody, whenever you are making a declarative statement that you intend to be taken as complete, and a certain piece of information, whether it's simply the sky is blue, my name is something like that. Okay, my name is, or I love to teach English. The sky is blue. Okay, so the following intonation is your most natural and effective choice here. It establishes clarity, it conveys confidence, and guides the listeners to understand that your thought on that particular point is finished. It's the foundational pattern for most everyday communication where you are simply sharing information. Okay, all right. Okay, continuing with another context. When do we use falling intonation? We also use it in commands. Okay, we use it, yes, in commands. Let's move on to that second context, which is on commands. So, falling intonation is predominantly used when you are when you're telling, I'm sorry, what happened? Anyway, when you are telling someone to do something. So, think about giving instructions or making maybe direct requests. The falling tone here, it conveys authority, it conveys directness, and a sense of finality to your instruction. It leaves little room for ambiguity or misunderstanding. So the listener understands that an action is expected. Okay, let's look at the examples provided in the slide. First is close the door. Let me just check if my screen is reflecting the same screen that I am looking at right now. Yes, all good. Okay. All right. Close the door. Now, when you say door with the following intonation, your voice, it descends decisively. Okay? This makes it a firm, clear instruction. It sounds like you fully expect the door to be closed. Because imagine if you said close the door with a rising intonation at the end, it would sound like a question, perhaps asking for permission or suggesting it rather than commanding it. So the falling tone leaves no doubt about your intention. Similarly, with the second example, sit down. Okay, the falling intonation down makes this a direct and unmistakable command. Whether you're telling a child, a pet, or giving instruction, in a formal setting, the descent pitch conveys that this is a definitive action to be taken. Okay, that is to make it clear that we are using, how do you call that? We are explaining the different contexts where following intonation can really foster, can really be utilized. Okay, all right. So that is for close the door and sit down. Examples of falling intonation. So in general, actually everyone, For any kind of instruction, order, or direct request where you want to communicate clarity and finality, following intonation is the standard. Even if you add please for politeness, like please wait here, the command itself on here will still often use a falling, what do you call that, falling tone to maintain that sense of clear instruction. So it's the vocal equivalent of saying this is what needs to be happen or to happen. Okay, that's on commands. Let's continue with another context. I think yes, another context we use following intonation on WH questions, information questions, which is kind of shocking, right? Because we know questions they typically raised at the end. Okay, now let's really expand on the use of following intonation when it comes to WH questions, or what we call information questions. This is a crucial area because it often differentiates clear natural English questions from those that might sound hesitant or unsure. Okay, let's really expand on the use of following intonation when it comes to WH question, or what we call information questions. So now this is a crucial area because it often differentiates clear natural English questions from those that might sound hesitant or unsure. So, as our slide shows, WH questions are those that begin with words like um, W, W, H. Okay, so who, what, where, when, why, or how even. The key thing about these questions is that you are looking for new information and the following intonation shows you are expecting an answer. So your voice typically starts on, how do you call that, on the World War and then drops steadily by the end of the question. So yes, um, the the voice is typically typically starts higher, okay, saving the bosses, I don't call that, saving the others, or where am I? Sorry, so, which saves, of course, no, our understanding on WH questions. Okay. Okay. Now here, the, how to call it, the pattern is that your voice typically starts higher on the WH word, which is usually, of course, it starts the whole sentence and then it drops steadily by the end of the question. This descending pitch, it signals that you completed, that you finished your inquiry and are waiting a specific factual response. So it conveys a sense of directness and completeness in your questioning. Okay. Now let's break down the examples from the slide. First is where are you from? Where are you from? Now when you ask this question, your voice falls down on the word from. You are directly seeking a geographical location. Let me put a slanted line there. Okay, that's too long, but yeah, it serves its purpose. So we're focusing on the address, the physical thing, the geographical location. So, or it could be a piece of you're seeking like a piece of objective information about someone's origin that is on following intonation, and especially in the WH questions context. Okay, all right. So the following intonation here makes the inquiry straightforward and signals that you are ready for the specific answer. Like, let's say I'm from somewhere. Okay, you give your address, you give your location. So if you were to use a rising intonation on from, you'll say it like this. Where are you from? Where are you from? No, you make sure that the last word is raised. Okay, it might sound like you're confirming something you think you heard, or perhaps expressing disbelief rather than genuinely asking for new information. The subtle difference in intonation completely changes the implied context of the question. Okay? Next example. What time is the movie? What time is the movie? Similarly, the intonation falls on movie. You're not asking if there is a movie, but when it is, which is, a specific data or piece, something like that. So the following pitch communicates that you have clearly articulated your request for information and are anticipating a numerical answer like a 7 p.m. or around noon, a rising intonation in movie, and imply you didn't quite catch the name of the movie or that you're surprised there's a movie at all instead of simply asking about the schedule. Okay? The pattern is incredibly consistent across all, you know, all standard WH questions. You can think about examples like why, okay? Why did you do that? We fall on that expecting a reason. Why did you do that? How was your day? Talking on day, expecting a descriptive answer. Who is coming to the party? Okay, falling on party. When will you be back? Falling on back, expecting a specific time this time. Okay. Now, in all these cases, everyone, the following intonation it conveys that you are confident in your question. Okay, you are not seeking information, but my how do you call it? You are expecting a direct informative answer. It's the vocal cue that says, I've asked my question. Now please give me the information. Even if you call it, even if it's really not that it's kind of heavy, but yeah, it's better than using a paper in discussing like a big paper for discussing. So yes, that is on falling intonation basically. No, in all these cases, everyone, the one I've mentioned earlier, the different contexts are situations in which WH questions are practiced, specifically leaning on falling intonation. In all these cases, the falling intonation conveys that you're confident in your question, like you're not seeking information. Okay. To summarize our discussion on the following intonation, we use it for the definitive statements of fact, for clear and direct communication or commands, I'm sorry, and of course, WH questions where we are explicitly seeking new information. In all these cases, the following part gives a sense of completeness. Okay, all right. So that's on that's on the WH questions. Okay, all right. So that's the second. How do you call that? Okay. You might get confused, okay? But no, it's all good. So far, we've already talked about the context of where you're just stating a fact, so statement of facts. Next to that is commands, okay? When you're telling someone to do something, that's on commands. It's also be done in following intonation, as well as WH questions, and now on exclamation. So let's really expand on the use of following intonation specifically for exclamations. So this is where English can truly sparkle with emotion, and intonation plays a huge part in making those strong feelings clear. When we use following intonation for explorations, it's about expressing strong emotion in a way that feels complete and definitive. Okay, maybe an analogy would be like a roller coaster. Imagine you are in a roller coaster ride. Your voice might climb up a bit to building. Okay, so that's it. So that's for exclamations, everyone. No, this is where English can truly sparkle the emotion, and the intonation plays a huge part in making those strong feelings clear. Okay. Now, when we use following intonation, everyone, for exclamations, it's about expressing strong emotion in a way that feels complete and how do you call this? Feels complete and definitive. Okay, you can imagine a roller coaster ride. As I've mentioned earlier, it plunges down dramatically in the most important words, signaling that the emotional statement is full and final. So it's not just a casual observation, it's a full release of feeling. Okay, let's unpack those examples to feel the impact. Okay, let's have first sentence. That's a great idea. Okay. All right. That looks horrible. Let me just, draw it again. Okay. It's tolerable. But anyway, that's a great idea. You can think about how you'd say this with genuine excitement. Your voice might start relatively high, perhaps rising slightly on grade, but then it takes a distinct, strong dive on idea. So this pronounced fall is what signals insincere enthusiasm and approval. It leaves no room for doubt about your positive reaction. It's a declaration, not a question or a tentative thought. Now, if your voice stayed flat, I wouldn't sound excited at all, right? Or if it went up, like this is a great idea, it would suddenly become a question, perhaps implying skepticism or a need for confirmation, completely undermining the exclamation's purpose. Okay, the following intonation ensures the strong emotional impact is clearly communicated. Another sentence we have here, how wonderful. Okay, so this is another perfect example of expressing delight or admiration. Your voice would likely to be quite high on, or yeah, quite high on how, and then fall significantly on wonderful. So descending pitch here amplifies the feeling of awe or joy. It makes the exclamation sound authentic and deeply felt. If you were to say how wonderful with a rising tone, it could sound sarcastic as if you did not quite hear what was wonderful, losing all the cushion you in here. Okay, all right. So it's important to note that this use is not limited to positive emotions, everyone. Following intonation also conveys strong negative feelings, like um, maybe a simple did I include some sentences? No, I didn't. So let me just think on the spot. Maybe by saying that's terrible. The sharp fall on terrible makes your dismay undeniable, or maybe what a mess. Now the voice falls on mess to convey strong frustration or disapproval. Now it's important to note that this use is not limited to positive emotions. Falling intonation also conveys strong negative feelings. Okay? Like in those sentences, that's terrible. The sharp fall on terrible makes your dismay undeniable, okay? Or maybe what a mess. The voice fails on mess to convey strong frustration or disapproval. So in all these instances, everyone, the following intonation, it takes the strong emotion and then delivers it with a sense of finality and full expression. It's like putting an exclamation mark, not just on paper, but in in the air with your voice. So this whole just doesn't it's just another stress-free reliever, traveling with someone, etc. Okay, that's just a sample context. All right, now be reminded, everyone, now in all these instances, not just this one, the following intonation takes the emotion and delivers it with a sense of finality and full expression. So it's like putting an exclamation mark not just on paper but in the air with your feelings. Okay, all right. Anyway, continuing with terrible and mess, so sad. But yeah, it's important to note that this use is not limited to positive informations. Earlier, it's important to note that you have you know that model. Okay, so to recap, the four primary uses of following intonation we've covered today. We use it to, for definitive statements of fact, for clear and direct commands, for WH questions where we are seeking new information, for strong exclamations that communicate intense emotion across all these uses. Now, the consistent thread is a sense of corruption, certainty, as well as directness. We have dedicated a lot of time to understand falling intonation because it's such a foundational pattern in English. Like, do you have any final questions? Thinking about it before we potentially shift gears to discuss the gas here inside the uh, here inside the location of the owner. Okay, that's good. So yes, if you're ready for an even deeper dive into the world of exclamation and their connection to falling intonation, then settle this particular use of falling intonation, which is where the emotional heart of English often beats most vibrantly, transforming simple words into powerful expressions of feeling. So remember, everyone, that the core idea here is that when you're using falling intonation for an exclamation, you are expressing strong emotion in a way that it feels complete, it feels definitive, and fully released. Okay, your voice, in a sense, is delivering the fact that delivering the final. So in a way that feels comfortable, sorry, something like that. It's just he's just sad, basically. So that's also an effect when it comes to this, okay? The core idea here, again, is that when you're using falling intonation or an exclamation, you are expressing strong emotion in a way that feels uncomfortable, okay? All right, okay? So that's how you process or you express strong emotion, okay? In a way that feels complete, in a way that feels definitive and fully released. Okay? Your voice here, in a sense, is delivering the final emphatic punctuation mark of your feeling. It's not just, how do you call it, stating someone or something, it's feeling it out loud with conviction. Okay? All right. Now let's have this one. Um, Another context that we have here is confirmatory tag questions. Now, this is when you're pretty sure about something and just seeking agreement, not really asking a question. Okay? All right. For a moment. Let me just, check if my slide is okay. Okay. All right. So again, confirmatory tag questions. Okay? So confirmatory tag questions. When you are pretty sure about something and just, seeking agreement, not really asking a question. So you're just seeking confirmation. Basically, you choose to say this thing because you want someone to validate, to confirm the fact that is inside that particular sentence. It's more of like finding if this is also what the others believe, like it's definitive. Okay, so yes, that's an example. An example sentence would be, it's a beautiful day, isn't it? So you're confident it's beautiful. Just in Because you're confident, you just invite someone in agreement. Okay, all right. Now, why is this falling intonation so vital for exclamations? Because we've already talked about falling intonation. Next to that is rising intonation, of course. Now, why is this falling intonation so vital for exclamations? First, as I've mentioned earlier, it is for definitiveness. Yeah, if that word, definitiveness. It signals that the emotional thought is complete. So the speaker has fully expressed their feeling and there's nothing more to add to that particular emotional statement. Okay. There's also clarity, actually. It removes ambiguity. Like the listener immediately understand that this is his a strong emotional utterance, not just a question, an incomplete thought, even, or casual observation. Okay. Yes. Now, again, it removes simply clarity, it removes ambiguity. So there's a strong emotional utterance, not a question, an incomplete GPT even, or there, I think there's none. It's just, scour over everything. Now, third is on impact and sincerity. The falling pitch adds significant vocal power and security on, I think, number one. Is it number one? Okay. Anyway, yes, we try to grab into these opportunities when it comes to having different judges for this segment. Okay. Now, third, impact on security. The following pitch adds significant focal power in society. It makes the emotion palpable, drawing on the listener's attention to the depth of feeling being conveyed. So, yes, I think it is quite simply the most, call that, the most natural and expected invested in their work. Okay, so it is quite simple. The most common ones are not here, I think. Not still here. Fourth, we have natural, and then the rising intonation. Another rising intonation. I try to define it per word, but yeah, basically, I've seen that she's trying to find some soap bars or any kind of things. Okay, just random things actually. Okay, so this is leaning on the impact and sincerity. Okay, what about naturalness? Like what's with nature? It is quite simply the most natural and expected way for native English speakers to express conclusive emotion. So you try to understand to use other intonation patterns for genuine explanation. Okay. All right. So as we bring our comprehensive discussion on following intonation to a close, remember its versatile power. Power, it gives certainty to statements of fact, authority to commands, directly to the directness to WH questions when seeking information, and hereby helpful impact and how strong authority to communicate, directness to WH questions when seeking information, and staying hardly impactful as well as their lives even. So the common thread is always the same sense of morality, finality, certainty, and direct explanation. Okay, so that's it on following intonation, I guess. Okay, so yes, that is on following intonation. It's a beautiful day, isn't it? Next. All right. Moving on from our detailed look at the falling intonation, we now turn our attention to the second of the main intonation patterns in English, rising intonation. Okay? As clearly indicated here, everyone, with the rising intonation, the pitch increases at the end of an utterance. So this means that as you near the conclusion of your words, the sound of your voice goes upwards, like rather than downwards. You're just happy. It's a vocal movement that you kind of like open it, of course, because it's delicate. Try to open it as much as possible without any damage. Okay, that's a rising intonation in the making. Okay, all right. Okay, yes, you just need to really practice in terms of the falling intonation. There's just so many contexts where such thing that we say can be interpreted in many ways, misinterpreted even. Okay, all right. As I've mentioned, we are now on rising intonation. So we move from our detailed look of falling intonation to this as the second option in main intonation patterns in English, rising intonation specifically. Now, as clearly indicated with rising intonation, the pitch increases at the end and of an utterance, of course. Um, that's just it, I think. No, we clearly indicated with rising intonation, the pitch increases at the end or an utterance. So this means that as you near the conclusion of your words, sound of your voice goes upwards rather than downwards. I think it's downwards. No motivation, but it's a vocal movement anyway. It's a vocal movement that lifts up the opening or the choreo basically. Okay, this means that as you near the conclusion of your words, the sound of your voice goes upwards rather than downwards. It's a vocal movement that lifts the sound, creating a social distance. Okay, all right. That's on rising intonation. We can say it as a pitch increases at the end. Again, pitch increases at the end. So this busy upward movement event get the speech was able to really, you know, I was able to really understand that at the time. But yeah, it's just a simple. Okay. Now the rising intonation here is "Are you busy?" So it serves to clear and some questions. But since the symbol for falling intonation is falling, how about rising intonation? It's rising, of course, very obvious. So if it's like that, that is how I think. No, I believe that's how we try to put something that is physical or that is something that the students can choose from. Okay, all right. So the rising intonation here, everyone, is in "Are you busy?" The word, the sentence "Are you busy?" It serves to clearly communicate the speaker's intent. They are genuinely busy and screaming tomorrow. Okay, so um, it serves to clearly communicate the speaker's intent here, which is they're genuinely seeking back information that they did not possess. The speaker truly does not know if the listener is busy, and the rising pitch unmistakably signals this inquiry. It acts like a vocal, how do you call that? Vocal question mark, prompting a response from the listener. So the listener, hearing this upward inflection, understands immediately that the direct answer is required, typically a yes or no in this particular stance. So, a particular instance. Now, so the intonation here establishes a clear conversational experience, expectation. The speaker has presented a query and the floor is now open for the listener to provide the necessary information. Okay? The rising pitch until a red shift safety shorts anyway. The intonation here establishes a clear conversational expectation. Like the speaker has presented a query, the floor is now open for the listener to provide the necessary information. So the rising pitch maintains this openness, indicating to provide the speaker, how do you call it, defined by them or by many. Rising intonation is pitch increases at the end. Now, why is it so important? Like, look at those people waiting for the celebrity maybe or someone. But yeah, that's an example. Let's let's have that. So the core purpose here is a genuine search for information that the speaker does not yet possess, unlike situations where yeah, there is, but you're just using the laptop. Okay. So it rises intonation patterns. All right. Okay. Consider the question, "Are you ready?" or "Are you busy?" When this question is spoken, the voice clearly and perceptibly rises on the final word. Okay. Ready. So this upward inflection is the signal of yes or no question in English. It vocally conveys that the speaker genuinely does not know the listener's state of readiness. The rising pitch acts as unmistakable signal, prompting the listener to provide a direct answer, essentially communicates, "I am unsure about this piece of information and I'm waiting for you to maybe to give something to, how do you call that, to approach it honestly, okay? I'm unsure about this piece of information. I'm about to have one. Okay, just as with the previous example, this upward pitch moves indicates from a suspicion to her. The voice raises distinctly on the final word, so just right before that, I think. Okay, so that's that. Similarly, observe the intonation in the question. Is she coming to? That's for rising intonation. Here, the voice rises distinctly on the final word or woo. A word too, sorry. So just as with the previous example, this upward watch or pitch movement This distinct on the final word. No, just as with the previous example, this upward pitch movements indicates that the speaker but are censored as this, that the speaker is, genuinely uncertain about the individual's attendance. So they are not confirming a suspicion, but as they are sincere asking for an unknown fact, whether something like they will indeed pungent. They're gonna build that, I believe. But yeah, they should be together too. Anyway, here the voice rises indistinctly on the final word. Two, speaker is genuinely uncertain about the individual's attendance, that they are not confirming a suspicion but are sincerely asking for an unknown fact, whether she will not need to be joining. Okay, the rising intonation unequivocally communicates this fundamental request for a simple affirmation or negation regarding her response. Okay, it's the speaker's way of saying, I have a question about this, and I need you to clarify it for me with a simple yes or no response. In both instances, of course, Lola would still be, or a person should still be beside someone who is really older than them. Here, in this case, maybe a senior citizen, a grandmother teaching her grandchild or grandchildren. Okay. Now we're continuing our explanation of rising intonation here. Okay. Now, this is a key melodic pattern in English speech where the pitch of the voice distinctively increases towards the end of an utterance. Like our second specific application of this pattern is houses on question tags showing uncertainty. So this particular use of rising intonation comes into play when a speaker is asking tag question and genuinely wants to know the answer. So let's delve into what genuinely want to what genuinely want to know the answer implies. It implies that there is a true lack of information on the part of the speaker. Like the speaker does not possess the specific knowledge they're asking about, and their utterance is a sincere attempt to obtain something. So, yes, it means, how do you call that? It means that there is a true lack of information on the part of the speaker. The speaker does not possess the specific knowledge they are asking for, but of course, no. That's another tool for putting the butter. No, but yeah, there's an actual canon unknown that needs to be resolved through the listener's response. Like the tag question in this context, foundations as directed and an earnest internal state. You're not sure if they like coffee. So I'm sorry, this is, where am I? This is, um, the speaker does not possess the specific knowledge they are about they're asking about, and their utterance is a sincere attempt to obtain that information from the shelter. There's an actual unknown that needs to be resolved through the listener's response. The tag question in this context, they are really believable. Of course, it should be. It should be credible enough. So the example provided here precisely illustrates this sentence. You like coffee, don't you? So that's a sentence. I wasn't able to paste it really here. But yeah, you like coffee, don't you? No? It started off with a simple sentence. Okay? Anyway, accompanying note here, it clearly explains the speaker's internal state. You're not sure if they like coffee. This is the core of the communicative act here. The speaker does not, show specific parts, of course. The speaker truly does not know the listener's preference regarding coffees, about preferencing over coffees. So this is one, okay? Another, this is one. So this is the core of communication here, everyone. The speaker truly does not know the listener's percentage regarding coffee. Like their interest is in acquiring the specific piece of information to convey the meaning, okay? All right. So, yes, you like coffee, don't you? Okay. The speaker truly does not know the listener's preference regarding office. That's why I made everything different once. Okay. The pitch of the voice clearly goes up on don't you. Okay. A phrase. It signals to the listeners that the speaker is awaiting for a specific response. This upward inflection creates an open ended conversational space indicating that the speaker's thought is incomplete and requires the listener's input for resolution. It is the sound of an individual actively probing for information, leaving the how do you call it, the conversational turn open until a definitive response. Okay, all right. Anyway, this rising intonation it is therefore absolutely critical. It transforms the tag from the union something, you know, depends on the location. Okay. All right. Okay. That's that. So we're going to continue our exploring on raising question. So here, when do we use it? We're gonna need to also include that. Where do we use it? When do we use it? I'm sorry. Course, we use it primarily for yes or no questions. That's the typical behavior of rising intonation, no? Asking questions or making questions. Questions that can be answered with a simple yes or no, basically. So it's close ended. Okay. First, um, that's an example. So to show uncertainty or doubt in a statement, you could also do that. The core principle here is that sometimes a statement can become a question or shows uncertainty just by using rising intonation. So this is a fascinating aspect of intonation, as it as it is the fundamental nature of an utterance without altering a structure. So a piece of information is served. Okay, a sequence of words that, if spoken with a neutral or single word or grammatical errors, as a declarative statement, can solely be the application of strong raising pitch at its end, convey a genuine query for an internal state of doubt. So this means that the vocal melody itself carries a significant semantic load, which of course signals to the listener that the speaker is not simply providing information, but is instead expressing a lack of certainty or a need for clarification or even, how do you call that, a sense of surprise. The rising pitch, basically, in this context, it acts as a vocal indicator of an unconfirmed thought, okay? An implicit question seeking reassurance or further detail. That's on yes or no questions, okay? Now, where are we? That's for rising intonation, especially yes or no question. Our examples here, are you ready? So yes or no. Is she coming too? Yes or no. It depends on your answer, of course. It depends on what is fitting in the context. If she's ready, of course, you'll say yes. If she's not, no. If she is coming, you'll say yes. Otherwise, no. Okay? All right. Next to that is, of course, we also use rising intonation when it comes to, for a moment, when it comes to question tags showing uncertainty. So, this particular use of intonation comes into play when a speaker is asking a tag question and genuinely wants to know the answer. Now, let's delve into what genuinely want to know the answer implies. It means that there is a true lack of information on the part of the speaker. The speaker does not possess the specific knowledge they are asking about, and their utterance is a sincere attempt to obtain that information from the listener. So there is an actual unknown that needs to be resolved through the listener's response. The tag question in this context, it functions as a direct and earnest inquiry reflecting the speaker's actual state of doubt or curiosity. So the example provided precisely illustrates this. You like coffee, don't you? You like coffee, don't you? So the accompanying note clearly explains the speaker's internal state. Don't you? no, that you are not sure if they like coffee, so you ask them. You confirm the fact that you think is true or not. So this is the core of the communicative act here. The speaker truly does not know the listener's preference regarding coffee. Their interest is in acquiring this specific piece of information. So to convey this genuine uncertainty and the true nature of the question, so the voice performs a distinct upward movement on the tag. Don't you? So that's the tag. So this rising intonation, it is the unmistakable auditory signal that indicates a real question is being posed. So the pitch of the voice clearly goes up on don't you. So it signals to the listener that the speaker is awaiting for a specific answer. This upward inflection creates an open-ended conversational space indicating that the speaker's thought is incomplete and requires the listener's input for resolution. So it is the sound of an individual actively probing for information, leaving the conversational turn open until a definitive response. Typically, they respond with yes or no, but they can also elaborate it. No, usually it's a yes or no. So this rising intonation is therefore absolutely critical here because it transforms the tag from a mere statement or confirmation into a true request for unknown information, directly reflecting the speaker's genuine uncertainty and desire for clarification. Okay? All right. Oh, for a moment. All right. Next, we have here. All right. So we also use rising intonation when it comes to lists, except for the last item. Okay, so we also apply rising intonation in list or on lists, except for the last item. So when you are listing things, your voice rises on each item until the last one where it falls. This rule highlights a dual function of intonation within a single structure. For the intermediate items in the list, that is, every item before the final one, rising intonation serves a crucial purpose. When the voice rises on these items, it signals to the listener that the speaker's thought is not yet complete. No? It creates a sense of expectation, indicating that more information or additional items are forthcoming. So the upward trajectory of the pitch acts like an auditory comma, signaling that there's more to come. And maintaining the listener's engagement as they await the full scope of the list, this sustained upward movement and it keeps the conversational flow open, ensuring that the listener recognizes the enumeration is still in progress. However, the pattern changes dramatically for the final item in the list. On this concluding element, the voice takes distinct downward turn, which employs falling intonation. So this purposeful descent of the pitch serves to clearly mark the end of the entire list. Now, it signals that the speaker has finished their enumeration, which provides a sense of completion and, of course, finality to the thought. So, the following intonation in the last item, it acts like a vocal period, definitively closing the list and indicating the speaker is done with their thought regarding the items being mentioned. Okay? For example, we have here, I bought apples, bananas, and oranges. Okay, I bought apples, bananas, and oranges. On apples, the voice rises. This rise immediately communicates that apples is just an item in a sequence and more information will follow. So the pitch lifts, cueing the listeners to anticipate further items. Then on bananas, the voice rises again. So this sustained rising pattern reinforces the ongoing nature of the list. So it continues to signal that the enumeration is not yet complete, maintaining that the listener's expectations for additional items is there. So the upward pitch on bananas, it clearly states that here's another item, but hold on, there's still more. Finally, on oranges, the voice distinctly falls. So this downward movement of pitch on the last item is the definitive signal that the list has concluded. So it provides a sense of resolution and finality, which indicates that all the items the speaker intended to mention have been delivered. So the following intonation on oranges unambiguously communicates this is the end of my list of purchases. This combination of rising pitch for each preceding item and a falling pitch for the last item creates a highly effective auditory structure, which make lists clear, organized, and easy for the listener to process and understand their completion. Okay? All right. Now we have arrived at the fourth and final application of rising intonation. But before that, let me check my screen. Okay. All good. Everything's good. All right. So for this one, it highlights its, it's what was okay. So here, this particular use, it focuses on how rising intonation can be employed to show uncertainty or doubt in a statement. So the core principle here is that sometimes a statement can become a question or show uncertainty just by using rising intonation. This is fascinating aspect of intonation as it demonstrates its power to transform the fundamental nature of an utterance without altering a single word or grammatical structure. So a sequence of words that, if spoken with neutral or falling intonation, would be perceived as a declarative statement and can solely be by the application of a rising pitch at its end convey a genuine query or internal state of doubt. This means that the vocal melody itself carries a significant semantic load, which signals to the listener that the speaker is not simply providing information here, but is instead they are expressing a lack of uncertainty, a need for clarification, or even a sense of surprise. So the rising pitch in this context, it acts as a vocal indicator of an unconfirmed thought, which is an implicit question seeking reassurance or further details. So let's carefully examine the examples provided on the slide. You're going where? You're going where? Now, in this example, the speaker uses words that could typically form a standard information, WH question. However, the rising intonation on where fundamentally shifts its meaning and the speaker's intent. The accompanying note on the slide clarifies this perfectly. So it is expressing surprise or doubt. When the voice rises on where, it does not necessarily mean that the speaker has no idea about the destination. Instead, it conveys a reaction to information that might be unexpected, unclear, or simply hard to believe. So this rising pitch here is the vocal manifestation of surprise, like the speaker might have just heard the destination. The rising intonation communicates their astonishment or disbelief. Also doubt, no? It could also be doubt. Alternatively, it can express doubt about the information received or the situation itself. The speaker is not entirely convinced or needs further information. So the rising intonation on where, no, the word where, in this statement, it doesn't simply ask for information as a straightforward WH question would. Rather, it interrogates the information itself or the context in which it was given, which expresses an emotional or cognitive reaction. It compels the listener not just to provide a location, but perhaps to repeat it, explain it, or otherwise resolve the speaker's surprise or doubt. Okay, so this demonstrates how rising intonation can add a layer of personal reaction and active engagement to a seemingly simple statement solely through the subtle yet powerful movement of pitch. So that is on rising intonation and of course the context where we use rising intonation. We conclude our in-depth look at the various applications of falling and rising intonation because this wraps up everything, everyone. Um, this is the end of my presentation basically for our lecture 2 on intonation, which is under pronunciation. So we wrapped up for today's session. We've covered today's session. We've covered the topics falling and rising intonation under intonation. Okay, so we've seen how its upward pitch or downward pitch movement serves to ask in direct questions or direct statements depending on the context. Okay, so that is it for today, everyone. Thank you for listening and have a great rest of the night. Goodbye.